A few news stories that I thought were interesting. Starbucks has gotten tired of just putting milk in your coffee. Now they're going to put olive oil in your coffee. This is apparently real and not a joke. God only knows what that's like. But apparently they really think it's going to be good. Good luck with that. More nations are trying a 4-day work week. This comes around every few years. We've been talking about it for years. And they say people in the United Kingdom, 3,000 people worked 4 days and promised to achieve the same amount of work. And as usual, people say this is great and it's wonderful and they get just as much work done and they have a lot more time to take care of their family and stuff. So this has been tried many times before. We'll see if it actually catches on this time. ChatGPT continues to be crazy. People are using it like mad. And now they've gotten so bad, they have a list of how many people submit AI-generated stories to a science fiction magazine, and it got so bad that they canceled all submissions. This is the chart showing how many false submissions they get, and as you see, in just the last couple months, it has gone up to an insane amount to where they've just stopped accepting any stories at all until they process the ones they have. We can just expect a lot more of this. ChatGPT is extremely good at making stuff that looks pretty good, although it doesn't actually make a lot of sense. And fiction seems like a really good place to apply it. So the Computer Misuse Act in Canada is now going to be up for some kind of revision, which sounds like a really good idea. It sounds a lot like the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act in America, which is a huge problem for all security professionals and security researchers, because it pretty much outlaws everything. In fact, the head of the FBI's cybercrime force came and talked to us at B-Sides Las Vegas, and he said, "We know that everything you guys do is illegal, but you can trust us. We only prosecute the bad guys due to prosecutorial discretion." And that's not a very stable foundation for security research to rest on. So anyway, they are reviewing it and trying to decide what to do. They have a lot of big issues, of course. And I don't think there's a lot of clear answers what to do. But anyway, one thing I always wanted was some kind of research exemption, and what they told me, at least in America, is that's completely off the table, because the main concern everybody has is that it's not tough enough to stop the criminals. And so anything that would seem to be weakening it is totally off the table. Well, that's anyway, they're going to have some kind of review of it in Canada to try to improve their laws. Maybe something good will come of that. I know the European laws on privacy have been very good, and they're mostly improving the situation in America, because our big companies have to meet the European standards that are much more strict than the American standards. Samsung has added an attempt to stop 0 days on their phones, which sounds like a pretty good idea. It's a sandbox. So when you download things, they run it in some kind of closed sandbox to try to stop files you download from taking over the phone, and they're specifically targeting NSO's Pegasus spyware, which is the stuff that many repressive regimes used. It's the stuff that the Saudi Arabian government used to hack Jeff Bezos. It's very, very famous. And so they're trying to make a generic solution for that kind of spyware that can take over your phone from a text message or a file. And so we'll see how well it is. But it is the same thing everybody would do. You open it in some kind of virtual machine to limit how much harm it can do. So it might work. On the other hand, Apple just announced a recently you can turn on your phone, the super secure mode, which I think does something similar. And I haven't heard much reports of how effective these things are, but they give you another layer of defense.
How is Apple's sandbox?
Apple's
Sandbox.
Apple's what?
Sandbox.
Sandbox. Well, I don't know.
It's a new feature, right?
Yes, they have a new feature. You can turn on, if you feel like you're on a high-value target, like a journalist or something, you can turn on a whole bunch of new security features they want. And I've seen a description in general terms of what they are, but I don't really know how effective they are. But there is like an extra secure mode of your iPhone now, if you get the latest version. So I thought this was interesting. Well, most batteries now are lithium ion, and they are lithium, and they have cobalt and nickel in them. And it turns out cobalt and nickel are real problematic. Nickel is expensive, and cobalt is mined by people under horrible conditions where they're getting poisoned, so there are moral objections to using it. So people are thinking of going back to the previous technology. The previous technology used lithium and then iron and phosphate.
LifePo.
What's that?
A LifePo battery. I use that in my motorcycle.
Yeah, and this has been around. It's an older technology, and it makes batteries that are bigger and heavier for the same amount of, but they can actually carry more voltage and have more life cycle. And they're very popular in China, and they're starting to announce, Ford's going to announce them in America. It would seem to me like you could totally use them in America, because Americans have these big trucks. Seems like you could haul a bigger battery around. Certainly they're talking about it. That may be a popular alternative to the lithium-ion batteries we're using now.
Is it the lithium polymer?
Lithium what?
Lithium polymer.
No,
No, it's not a polymer. It's just,
LiFePO.
yeah, it's just iron and phosphate. So I think it's just a paste, like they always are. I'm not sure. I think most of them are just a sort of semi-solid
It's
substance.
very popular, but popular right now in China is lithium polymer.
Lithium polymer in China. I did not know about that. Okay. That's interesting. That might be something new. I don't think this is a polymer.
No, it's pretty old, but it's cheaper. It's getting close to the lithium iron performance, but it's cheaper, but it's not as good.
Yeah, this is also the same. Similar performance, but cheaper. Yeah. But heavier and bigger. That's the reason why it isn't as popular.
It also doesn't work as well in cold conditions.
Work as well as,
If you have really cold conditions, it won't work near as well.
well, I don't know about that. They could be temperature sensitive, yeah. And the other thing I don't know about is how they compare in terms of risk of fire, because they do tend to short out and explode. And I don't know how they compare on that scale either.
I mean, I have one on my motorcycle to start it.
Yeah.
I thought the fire, somebody making improvement on the lithium iron, but it's sort of put in a couple of ground plates
Yeah.
in between them, and once it's sort of the whole thing is we won't catch fire.
Yeah, that, I've heard.
Somebody put that in.
Yes, there are people trying to put in defenses to stop the fires, because that's a big problem. All right, good. All right, Rouhani, good. Yeah, that's all there's going to be today's presentations. There'll probably be a lot of them. All right, anyway, so the Supreme Court is now going to decide about Section 230. This is a big issue, and probably we can expect something horrible like we got an abortion, because it's very much the same. The latest Supreme Court in the last few years has gotten so radical that they take cases they don't have to. And that used to be the fundamental law of the Supreme Court, is minimum motion. You do not take any case unless you have to. If anything resolved at a lower level or on a technicality, you do that. You try to avoid setting precedents. You don't need to. But they jumped into highly controversial stuff and desired to set precedents, and this is like that. So there's a lot of people who want to remove Section 230. And this is very much like Brexit, where they want to remove a really important law, and there's just nothing but smoke and misinformation about what the consequences will be. I think a whole lot of right-wingers imagine that if you got rid of Section 230, then they'd have to let all the right-wingers back on Twitter like Musk did. And in fact, probably the opposite is true. If you got rid of Section 230, they would have to start kicking anybody off who says anything controversial, because now they'd be liable for it. So everything would become sort of G-rated, and you wouldn't be able to. It'd be like, this is what I've heard about TikTok. I've heard you can't do anything even slightly off color, nothing about vaccines, nothing about politics on TikTok. They'll just throw you off because they want it to be lighthearted and for children. They don't want it to be in any way shocking or offensive. And I think that's what the internet would turn into, like broadcast TV, heavily censored. Anyway,
Section 232?
Section 230 is the thing Al Gore helped pass that said created the internet. What it does is it means you are not liable for what people put on your platform. So if you run something like Twitter, and then people come and tweet horrible things, you are not liable for that. You're not considered a publisher. If you're running,
Why is the right-wing want to stop it?
the right-wingers have been pushing the belief that if you got rid of this, there would be unfettered free speech on the internet, which doesn't really make any sense. Just like in Britain, they've said that if you got rid of,
The platform is not responsible for content. It's
yeah, the
only
platform is not,
right?
right, that platform is currently not responsible for content as long as they take it down when there's a complaint. And that way you can run something like Facebook or Twitter where you don't even control what people say. You don't have to hold everything and run it through a board of censors first before posting it, the way television does. Television has to censor everything to make sure you don't use a forbidden word or show nudity or something, and so do newspapers. They're responsible for everything. So you can't just post anything in a newspaper. You have to send in like a letter, and then they get to examine it before they publish it, because they're legally liable. And that seems like what would happen on the internet. Now, some people really want this. I know the woman that does a lot of privacy cases, I forget, a very famous lawyer, she wrote a good book, and she would like to see this because she deals with a lot of people who get stalked and harassed on the internet. And she said if they were just liable for the content, I could sue them for letting people stalk and harass people, and they would have to stop. And right now, they don't. They'll just kick the people off and then let them come back with a different name tomorrow, and the platform doesn't care. Like Twitter and Facebook, many people are being harassed on them, and they really can't do anything. And so anyway, we're going to see. Apparently we're going to have, the Supreme Court is going to hear arguments this week, and there'll probably be a decision coming in a few months. It will probably be a poorly thought out decision that will lead to trouble. That's the current Supreme Court is very much in the mood to just make drastic changes, poorly considered, as far as I can tell. This is pretty amazing. If you've had a stroke and part of your body is paralyzed, they found they can stick electrodes in your spinal cord and stimulate the damaged cells, and you regain function. This woman had her arm paralyzed for years, and they regained function by putting these electrodes. Now, right now, they've only done it in like a prototype test, but for 8 people, they recovered a lot of function, and even when you remove the electrodes, they retain some of the function. So this really sounds promising, and it'll be years going through the medical system before it's therapy most people can get, but it does seem very promising. And so this one, I've seen a lot of people getting bent out of shape by this. Twitter has now said they're going to get rid of SMS-based two-factor authentication. Now, this is the most popular form of two-factor authentication, and it is the weakest and least secure, where you get a message on your phone. And the problem is those messages are easy to steal, easy to deflect. There's ways to take over your phone, like SIM swapping. So it's really a pretty miserable form of two-factor authentication, but it's the most popular. Most people don't know to do a more sensible thing like get a hardware key or put an app on their phone like Google Authenticator. And now they're going to take that away because Elon Musk's argument is it's costing them a lot of money to send those SMS messages. So they no longer want to give away this service for free. So if they want it, they're only going to give it to paid customers. Now, security people I saw a blog where they said, this doesn't make any sense for security because the people that pay money should get a more secure option, not a less secure option. But it does make sense from a financial point of view. And I must say, as I often do these days, I find myself, even though everybody hates Elon Musk, I think his business decision makes sense here. I mean, why would you pay money to give people a rotten service that isn't very good for them anyway? You say, look, if you want two-factor, get real two-factor with an app. And if you want it, you can have it. But I'm not going to spend money to give you something that's not worth much. And if people really want that convenience and the lower security, I'm only going to give that to my paying customers who can have whatever they want. It makes sense to me. Anyway, but that's what he's doing. And it does create this strange situation that the paying customers can now do something unsafe that the free customers are not going to be able to do. Anyway. All right. So I think that's enough of this. Let me stop this recording and